In most countries, your last name carries weight. Rockefeller, Kennedy, Buffett. In Vietnam, your last name tells you almost nothing. Because in a country of 100 million people, about 40 million share the same surname, Nguyen. That means every time you meet 10 Vietnamese people, statistically 4 of them are Nguyen. This wasn't genetics. It wasn't coincidence. It was survival. Dynasties collapsed. Colonizers standardized paperwork. And millions of families made the same quiet calculation. It's safer if we all look the same. But that decision didn't just reshape surnames. It reshaped how identity works in Vietnam today. I'm John, a Vietnamese American living here full-time. And even growing up Vietnamese, I never stopped to ask why Nguyen was everywhere. In Southern California, where I'm from, there were always 3 or 4 Nguyens in every classroom, at church or temple.
More Nguyen's at Tet festivals.
Even more. I just assumed it meant they were all loosely connected. Vietnamese families are big. Case closed. Then I moved back. One afternoon in Saigon, I was having coffee with 4 different guys.
All named Nguyen?
Different middle names, different provinces, different family histories. So I asked, "Are you guys related?" They laughed. Not even close. And that was the moment I realized something. In Vietnam, sharing a surname often tells you almost nothing about ancestry. That's historically unusual. Because in most societies, surnames are clan markers. In Vietnam, at one point, they became liability markers. For nearly 1,000 years, Vietnam was ruled by dynasties. When one dynasty fell, the next didn't just take power peacefully. They removed threats. And threats weren't just generals or officials. They were bloodlines. Imagine it's the 13th century. A new dynasty takes control. If your surname matches the former ruling family, you're not neutral. You're a symbol. You represent potential rebellion, even if you're just a farmer. So families adapted. When the Lý dynasty collapsed in 1225, many people named Lý changed their surname. Quietly. No announcements. Just survival. Over centuries.
Trun, Ho, Mak.
The same pattern repeated. And this is where people get tripped up. Because later,
Nguyen
becomes the most powerful surname in the country. But earlier, for long stretches of history, it functioned like camouflage. It was common enough that it didn't scream old regime. It didn't put a target on your back the way a ruling clan name could. Then the irony happens. The name people used to hide eventually becomes the name that rules the last dynasty in Vietnamese history. But political survival alone doesn't get you to 40%. Because survival created momentum. Colonial bureaucracy multiplied it. By the 1800s, Nguyen was already common. They were the dynasty. They were the court. They were the official story of the country. So when the French arrived and tried to turn Vietnam into paperwork, they weren't choosing a random name. They were choosing the most legible name in the entire system. And they introduced something Vietnam had never experienced at scale. Mass documentation, census records, tax rolls, land registration, labor tracking. Picture a colonial office, stacks of paper, ceiling fans spinning, officials trying to standardize millions of names into one system. Many rural Vietnamese didn't have surnames formalized in a way that matched French requirements. To a colonial administrator, inconsistent naming isn't culture, it's inefficiency. And inefficiency costs revenue. So when formalizing records, officials often defaulted to the most recognizable ruling surname at the time.
Nguyen?
Not as a royal privilege, as administrative convenience. Once something enters official records, it becomes generational. Political camouflage became bureaucratic default.
Nguyen didn't just survive.
It scaled. This is what large systems do. They optimize for simplicity and repeatability. The French optimized control. The unintended outcome? Surname saturation. And that saturation forced Vietnamese society to adapt again. When 40% of the population shares one surname, it loses signaling power. So Vietnam shifted identity forward to the given name. Take Vietnam's richest man.
Pham Nhật Vuong.
In media, he is referred to as
Ông Vuong. Mr. Vuong. Not Mr. Pham.
because Pham is too common to clearly identify him. Same with the Prime Minister.
Pham Minh Chinh. He is called Ông Chinh, not Ông Pham. If a headline said, Ông Nguyễn,
It would communicate almost nothing. So clarity moved to the personal name. This isn't informality. It's efficiency. When surnames stop differentiating people, communication adapts. But here's the deeper shift. If your surname cannot signal legacy, status must move somewhere else. In Western cultures, surnames can imply dynasty. Rockefeller suggests generational wealth. Kennedy suggests political power. In Vietnam,
Nguyen.
signals nothing, which means status signaling must move. And historically, it moved to tangible assets: land, location, ownership. In District 1 of Ho Chi Minh City, land can exceed 1 billion Vietnamese dong per square meter, which is about $40,000. A narrow 4-meter tube house on a prime street can be worth $10 million or more.
Two people named Nguyen?
One owns 3 buildings. One rents a 25 square meter apartment, about 270 square feet. The surname doesn't differentiate them. Assets do. And here's why that matters psychologically. Vietnam has lived through dynastic collapse, colonial rule, war, hyperinflation, and rapid economic reform. Names changed. Governments changed. Currency systems changed. Land endured. So over centuries, identity detached from surname, and value anchored to something physical. The surname once protected the person. Assets now protect the future.
Having the same surname is not proof of one giant family.
It's proof of repeated adaptation. When power shifts, blend in. When bureaucracy standardizes, consolidate. When surnames lose meaning, shift identity forward. When identity becomes neutral, differentiate through assets. This is Vietnam's country logic. And if history teaches families that names can change, that governments can reset, that paper systems can fail, then what do you store value in? Next episode, we're exploring defensive economics. Why Vietnamese families accumulate gold, not as decoration, but as insurance against instability. Subscribe so you don't miss it.